What's up, Punters Pod listeners? You can listen to us every Wednesday on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or even watch us on YouTube. Now, let's get into the show.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Punters Pod. What a time to be alive. Are the Pies back? Should Clarko get the sack? The Bombers avoided their weekly smack. And I am solo today, so let's all give me some slack. Of course, it is only Ethan here. Jezza is gone today. He's over there in Europe somewhere, sunbaking, I'm sure. And boys, not good news. We all know I went away last year and I sent in my tips every single week for 6 weeks. It is week 1 of Jezza missing the pod and he has not sent in his tips as of yet. So I have no tips from him, but I, of course, have all my tips where I went 7 of 9 last week. Only had losses on the Swans game where they lost to Adelaide. I had Sydney at the line and the Lions game who West Coast actually gave a very, very good showing to, and I had the Lions at the line there. They did not cover. Other than that, I went 7 out of 9 on my free tips, 1 out of 2 on my player props. So very promising. I will be doing that again this week for sure. Don't you worry about that, boys. I am in very good form lately. So even though Jezza is here, even though his tips aren't here like he promised, I think we should be okay with my tips and just a bit of footy talk. Just a bit of a preview and review from last week as well. Lads, we're in round 20 of the AFL season. I cannot believe I'm saying that. It feels like just yesterday the season was starting, but we're all the way here in round 20. So it is really heating up, and that prompted me to think, who are the teams that can win the flag? On my Punters Pod Ethan account, there was a lot of controversy, especially from salty Hawthorn fans, when I said that the only 3 teams that can win the flag are Fremantle, Sydney, and Brisbane. Made that prior to the round starting, but I'm sticking with it. I'm obviously still on Fremantle. How can you not be? There's a lot of talk that Fremantle are peaking too early and that they'll fall off. I'm still firmly a Fremantle believer. Their list is just so stacked. I can't believe some comments on that Punters Pod Ethan post was saying that, look, their list isn't that good. They just have no injuries. Their list is stacked everywhere. Players like Judd McVie aren't even in their top 15 players. That for me is incredible. Then Sydney had that loss, but I'm still not off Sydney. I feel like a lot of people came at my throat there saying, look, Sydney lost to Adelaide. How can you have them as your premiership chance? But for me, they're still one of the top 3 teams. They're there for a reason. When the whips start cracking during finals and later in the season, I think Sydney are going to be okay. I think they'll get it right. I can't lie. The last month hasn't been great for Sydney. Going back to that probably St Kilda game before the bye. But I'm still all chips in on Sydney. I can still see them having a big part to play come finals time, the end of this season. And then Brisbane. How can you ride out Brisbane? How can you ride off Brisbane? How can Hawthorn fans, Geelong fans, Adelaide fans, Melbourne fans tell me that their team is better than Brisbane? I just don't see it. For me, Brisbane are that team. Brisbane are a team who are really knocking down the door. I might even have them above Fremantle because push come to shove, grand final day, Fremantle played all the way through Optus, Lions played all the way through the Gabba. I'm probably backing Brisbane. How can you not? Lachie Neale's still a beast. All these young players coming through, blossoming. They are just unreal, and I think Brisbane will have a massive say come finals time. But yeah, Hawthorn fans, I've got nothing against the Hawks. I don't hate the Hawks. I know you're all coming for my throat, but I just don't see you as one of the top 3 teams. You're probably the 4th best team in the comp. That's fair enough. That's great. I'm sure you can respect that opinion. Not everybody's going to have you as their premiership favourites. Unfortunately for you, I'm one of those people. So do with that what you must. Turn off the pod if you don't like that. I don't think Hawthorn win the flag this year. Could be wrong. Could have egg on my face, and that's completely fine. Talking about 3 of the 18 teams, let's talk about the 19th team because they have appointed a coach. Of course, it's Ken Hinkley to Tasmania. The Devils have their coach. Now, Jez, as we all know, used to love Ken Hinkley, loves his Port Adelaide days, the emotional Ken games. And I think that's why this selection was made. I think that's why he is the coach of Tassie, the inaugural coach, because he can really rile up a group of players, really pull at the heartstrings. I think that is very important for this first coach of this new team. Do I think Ken Hinkley's going to win a flag at Tasmania? Probably not. Look, from everything you've been hearing, the AFL is going to set up this Tassie team to be competitive, to be better than GWS and Gold Coast were early. And I think there's a real chance that in the first 4 years, they make a final series. I do not doubt that for a second. I don't think it's going to be like the two former expansion teams where they come in and straight away it is like bottom feeders for the first 5 to 6 years. I think they will have a GWS type rise that GWS had in years probably 5, 6, 7 in their first maybe years 2, 3, 4. I see that happening for this Tassie team. And I think Ken's a good appointment. Like, we all know I'm a Collingwood supporter here, so not salty, no nothing. I loved Bucks as a coach. I loved him even more as a player, and I wish him well, but I did not think he was the man for this job. I don't think he's a great senior coach. He made the grand final that year. He did everything right, but if you really look at that season, that's the year that the Pies brought in all these assistant coaches around him. Longmuir, for example, who right now is the best coach in the league. He came in that year to really help things with the backline for Collingwood that season. So that 2018 season, Bucks had a lot to play with it. Obviously, he was the senior coach. I don't think overall he was the man to do Tasmania. Obviously, Geelong looked like horrible. His backline at Geelong looks horrible since he's been appointed there. So I'm not all chips in on Bucks as much as other people were adamant he was going to get the job. Out of the three, if I was going to give it to anybody, it would have been Longmire by a mile. People argue that Sydney had the system there for him. That's why he was such a good coach at the Swans. I think it was more to do with him. I think he's an incredible leader, an incredible figure. I know Ken is similar, but I think Ken can be a bit too emotional. I know that's why he probably got the job. I think he can waver too much and he lets pressure get to him a little bit. I think Longmire is very steady, and I think I'm really worried personally as a Carlton hater. Sucked in Carlton, Pies bet you on the weekend. But I'm really worried about, I'm really worried that Longmire goes to the Blues. I hope they don't opt for Longmire, but I would be scared if they do get him. And one last thing before we get into normal proceedings, have to fill in a bit of time here, boys, so bear with me. And I wanted to talk about those things because sometimes I feel like the man that's usually to my left, Jez, can be rushing through trying to get to the bets because he is the betting man. But sometimes these are important topics, and I feel like Tasmania, and since it's round 20, only 4 or 5 weeks away from finals, flag talk was important. And my last little bit was the World Cup. That was obviously a great event. Just proves daytime grand final can work. I'm neither here nor there on it, but the World Cup final was during the day. That was very interesting. Shout out to Spain. I backed in a multi there from our sponsors, Punt AI, which was Lamine Yamal, 1 foul, and Spain win. I'm pretty sure that was the multi, which hit beautifully. A nice little double up there on my Monday morning at 5 a.m. So could not complain there. And boys, let's get straight into it with the random player that's above my head. If you're watching the YouTube, have a guess who this is, because this player right now, it's probably hard to see on the YouTube, but go to the Instagram story of the Punters Pod. I post it every single week on the story while I release the Spotify, the YouTube, the Apple Podcast. I send all those messages out. Then I post a random player above my head. I'm not going to write it this week. I usually write the player, but this week you have to guess it. For all my audio listeners, this player is wearing a Melbourne jersey. He has hair. A lot of people probably don't know he played for Melbourne or had hair. That's as much as you'll get. I'm pretty sure at his second club, he played 300 games. So he's a superstar of the game, a superstar of that club. He was a club captain at one stage. I am 90% sure. Could be wrong on that. But absolute great player. Played for Melbourne. And last clue, mega clue here. He had a namesake in the competition at the same time. There was a player from another club that had the exact same name as this player. Whoever gets it first, I will give you a shout out next week on the podcast. So send in your messages, your guesses, either in the DMs or my story. I'll put on the Punters Pod story a little text box right in the player of the name of the random player above my head. As we get into betting results for last week, boys, I can't lie, it was a pretty shit week for me. Mackay fakes a knee and goes out for the Pies Blues game, which ruins my player prop, and I had him in a multi for only 2+. 3+ was my player prop there with Harry Mackay. That was very interesting, that knee injury. Very, very interesting. As we all know, we had that controversy a few years ago in that final series where Jezza went on and this podcast right here and said that he was faking that concussion. Had very massive mirroring scenes to that. Didn't look very much, looked very innocuous, but Mackay is missing 2 weeks, they reckon. So very interesting there, but fucked my multi nonetheless. Swans players just let me down in that game. Had a lot of Swans players. I really thought they were going to stamp their authority on the Crows. Crows played well, shut down a lot of their key players. So that hurt me there. Had a very bad week. Then Naz under was my best bet of the week. Had a feeling O'Shane Mullen would go to him and get the job done like he did with ease. O'Shane absolutely locked down Naz, was no chance. I made another very controversial video on Punters Pod Ethan. If you're listening to this, make sure you get around Punters Pod Ethan on the TikTok and the Instagram. It's more hot takes style videos than the usual betting talk we have here. And I think Naz is that type of player that can very much so butcher the ball, very much so get locked down by a tag, and he gets the most cheap touches in the league. And I don't think he deserves them because, first of all, butchers the ball consistently. When he tries to chew off more than he tries to bite more than he can chew, is the saying there. And once the tag comes, he is very susceptible to absolutely being shut down. So I took the under there at GMHBA, was very happy with that. And in that same game, I multied that with my other pick, which was Bailey Smith, my player prop, 32 plus at $1.85. And that hits beautifully. The hair's 35. He just keeps dominating GMHBA Stadium since he's been a cat. And then I was also very, very happy with my last bet of the round, which was my Dons plus 36.5 leg that won as a single. Jezza laughed at me last week when I said Dons 30 plus 36.5, and they end up winning the game. Was not so. Well, look, you're always surprised when Essendon win the game because they've only won twice this year. That was their second win. But I saw it coming. GWS, obviously up and down roller coaster team, can never trust them. And I had a feeling that there was a strong chance Essendon, that was the game that they had to show something at Marvel, Sunday, bullshit time slot later in the day against a Giants team who hate coming to Marvel. And it paid off huge for me there. $1.90, obviously, plus 36.5 at the line. And wow, when they won, I was very, very happy. So that was a nice bet there for me. So probably all in all, broke even on the week, but could have been a lot better if little things didn't fuck me like Mackay, like Sydney players, like some of the other things I named. Let's get on to Jez's favourite segment, the betting blacklist. And this week on the watch list, we have Caleb Sarong 28 plus and Andrew Brayshaw 30 plus. 2 weeks in a row, heating up for finals, both these boys. They get it once again. They're still on watch though, boys, because they just snuck it in 2 weeks in a row after not doing it for like 16 weeks straight. I think they're on my blacklist, but I got to give them their grace. 2 weeks in a row, they get it done. So very happy there. Brayshaw's just playing great footy. Like, I know he was on Jez's blacklist for most of this season, but he's playing really good footy, really, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's very commanding footy is the way I'll put it. And Sarong is really hitting his straps again after having that 3 or 4 weeks out earlier in the season. So yeah, really good from them. And Fremantle will have Young coming back in this week, which doesn't really scare me for touching Fremantle players. I've got a Fremantle player in my player props. I think that Fremantle are very good and they're good enough, especially in a game like this week, who they have a weaker opponent, that they can really all get the footy and Young will come in and just ease back in because there's no need for him to come in and really dominate yet. So Fremantle players, the duo of Sarong and Brayshaw, still on my watch list for 25 plus. And on my blacklist is that man I spoke about earlier. It's the Zaya Wangan-Millera. When the opposition tags him, he goes missing. You cannot trust him. You cannot trust him at all. You could probably trust a stripper more than him. Unbelievable there, but Naz blacklisted because I will not be touching him for the rest of the season unless it's an under in a game I really, really like the opposition tagger. And this week, it was obviously O'Shane Mullen, and now they play North Melbourne, who don't really have a hard and fast tagger. So I probably will not touch Naz whatsoever. Even though it's at Marvel, even though against North, I still don't think I will go near him for disposals. And that's why he's blacklisted for me this week. Boys, I've got an extra player prop for you today because I love you all so much. I knew Jez didn't put in the work. So I've got you covered. I've got the player prop ready to go for you. 3 of them. Last week I got 1 of 2 right. I'll recap that. I had Bailey Smith 32 plus disposals at $1.95. I didn't credit myself that extra 10 cents. I said it was $1.85. It was $1.95. The logic there, GMHBA Stadium, 30 plus disposals in I think 80% of his games since joining the category. So love that there. That was a nice win. And then I got voided on that, obviously, Harry Mackay, 3 plus goals, $3.80. Thought he would munch up Collingwood's backline, especially it looked like Billy Frampton wasn't going to play. But of course, he plays for Collingwood, so the tribunal let him off right there. And it didn't look that bad because if you looked at the final statistics, I'm pretty sure McGovern had 2 or 3, and so did Kemp. So the logic was strong. It was just Harry Mackay faked an injury to cook me right there. Let's check the goals. Yeah, so McGovern had 2, Cripps had 2, Kemp had 1 goal, 3. So the opportunities were there for those bigger forwards against the Pies, as they usually are, and they probably will be this week with Adelaide's humongous forward line against Collingwood's lackluster key defenders. Shout out Billy Frampton. But this is why you listen to the Punters Pod, sponsored, of course, by our sponsors, Punt AI. These are our player props. Make sure you go to Punt AI, DM the word premium, let them know you are sent from the Punters Pod, that the Punters Pod boys sent you, and you'll get a cheeky discount right there. But first player prop I have for you today is Murphy Reid, 25 plus disposals at $2.12. Fremantle midfielder, I know, very scary, very crowded in there. But Murphy can be the forgotten man in this Freo midfield, and I love him against the Eagles side, who will be putting work into Sarong, putting work into Brayshaw, and probably letting Murphy Reid run a bit of a muck. I think there's a huge chance one of Brayshaw or Sarong get rested, like we saw Shai Bolton get rested last week. This Eagles game is a game where I think Longmuir can throw a few things around, really test the waters with his squad against probably a game that means nothing. They're 3 games ahead. Even they're not going to drop this game, but even in an alternate universe where they drop this game, would not hurt them at all. So it's probably a game where the Fremantle coaching staff would be likely to test things out. Probably a bit more Murphy Reid midfield time. Put them up against Harley and see who the best young player in Perth is. So I really like that there. Murphy Reid, 25 plus disposals at $2.12. And my second leg, boys, out of the 3, I came with a value today because this is a $2.35 one anytime goal scorer. It is Bo McCreary. He is an inconsistent goal scorer, but I like Bo here in his home state of South Australia, where in previous history since his career started, he kicks at least 1 goal a year at Adelaide Oval. This year against Fremantle in that gather-round clash, he did not score a goal. And I forgot if the Pies have played at Adelaide Oval so far other than that gather-round match this year. But I really like this matchup. Bo McCreary, he scored 2 last week. Tassie's in the news, so probably his future team is in the news. He'll probably want to impress there. I really do enjoy Bo McCreary anytime goal at that value of $2.35. I think it's a very big chance of happening, and I love him at that ground, Adelaide Oval. And also, I just love this game for goal scorers. I feel like Pies and Crows always have a lot of goal scorers happening. So, to recap what I've got so far, Murphy 25 plus $2.12, Bo McCreary anytime goal at $2.35, and I've got a 3 plus goal scorer at $3.35. It is Mitch Lewis, 3 plus goals, $3.35. He is hiking up his contract price, and his name has been big in the media lately, especially this week. He's going to try and add some more zeros to the end of his contract type of game here for Mitch Lewis. I think that he showed last week that he can have a big performance against a weak opposition because he's really the big dog in that forward line right now. Gunston's a bit older. He doesn't really care that much. I know he's done it earlier this year, the goals, but I think right now Gunston's just worried about finals time. He's just worried about getting himself right and not injured for finals. I think Mitch Lewis can go back-to-back weeks scoring. I think last week he scored 5. I think he can have another big bag this week against another poor opposition in Essendon. They've got this week, the Hawks. So I love Mitch Lewis there, 3 plus goals, $2.35. Combine my 3 legs, which are Murphy Reid 25 plus at $2.12, Bo McCreary anytime goal at $2.35, and Mitch Lewis 3 plus goals at $3.35, and that combines to a nice $12.05 multi there for you boys. Wow, that is big value. I love it so much. And let me have a little water break here because I've been talking for 20 minutes straight, boys. I hope you appreciate that this is not the easiest job on earth doing it by myself, but I gave you the extra leg there. And I'm going to give you a very in-depth look into the reviews of all the games last week, starting with the Crows versus Pies, and then a preview onto the week that is coming, round 20 of the AFL season. Adelaide versus Collingwood at Adelaide Oval, boys. Crows review from last week. It was such a dominant performance. It almost feels like they're actually hitting perfect timing coming into the finals. It feels like a bit of an opposite of last year, because last year, obviously, they were peaking all year long. Then they started to stagger probably the last 5 weeks going into the final series. Rankin gets suspended in this matchup from late last year. And then it all falls apart in finals. Obviously, they're going in straight sets. Fun little fact, last time last year, I actually watched this game on a beach in Greece when Collingwood just lost and Rankin gets in trouble. But I feel a lot better that the Pies went back and bet them in the final, that first final there, to book themselves into a prelim final. This year, Adelaide's obviously the dominant team. Can they win the flag? Oh, it's so hard to see because, look, I wrote down here that they've got a lot of holes on their list, on their actual game day team. But when you go through it, their forward line is stacked. Their midfield has a lot of talent, like Dawson, Rankin, Berry's been very good this year. You've got a Saligo who hasn't set the world on fire, but he's still so serviceable. You've got a Rochelle that can run through there. But still, it feels like their midfield still lacks a little bit. Then you've got their back line, which these players last year and the year before looked really promising. You looked at your Worrells and your Butts and your Keane, who is out this year, but you looked at this backline group and you thought, wow, even with Nick Murray, it's a very good looking list. It's a very good looking backline. It's kind of wavered a bit. It's not as strong as once thought, but I still think they've got the list, they've got the talent, but I just can't see them as one of those top teams, which sounds crazy because they toyed with Sydney last week, who is one of my top teams. I still think when push comes to shove, Adelaide probably can't go all the way. I think a prelim for sure. They feel like that team that can win the prelim. Yeah, like I said, they toyed with Sydney last week. They're flying at the moment, the Crows. But I don't think this Pies team will be easy beats. Even though their form might be a little fake, I think there's a big chance, because of the closeness of these matchups over the last 4 or 5 years, to be perfectly honest, that the Pies come out and give them a real run for their money. Those Pies, but last week, they won their 5th in a row. But how real is the Pies form? I'm a Pies man. There's no hiding that. But 5 wins in a row against really poor sides. The Pies have struggled to beat any team above them on the ladder this year. They, of course, drew with Hawthorn. They got smashed by Geelong, who's below them now, but they even couldn't get above Adelaide. They couldn't get above. They just lost to Fremantle, just lost to Sydney. It's a mixed bag season because I know that's the popular thing to say lately that, Collingwood haven't been anybody above them. But against Sydney, they've only lost by under a goal. Against Fremantle, they only lost really late in that game, only by under 20 points. So it's not as bad as they might make it out to seem, but it hasn't been good. And I don't really buy into this 5-game win streak as much as other people. Nick Dacos is just ridiculous. Like, every week, this Brownlow's his. Like, there's every year, like, even last year, there was doubt. Maybe Cripps, maybe Dawson, maybe somebody else. Nobody thought Real, to be fair. But this year, it's just unanimous. There is no world where he does not win the Brownlow. I'm sorry, Bonds. I'm sorry, everybody else. It is Nick Dacos. It is nobody else. It is Nick Dacos by a country mile. The scoreboard was not even accurate last week against the Blues. I know a lot of the Blues fans are pointing to the fact that Collingwood didn't really spank them. But at the end of the day, at that game, maybe this is a bit of bias coming in. A lot of those Blues goals were directly from free kicks. I can remember that Cripps one from that free kick, that Walsh 50. There was a fair few that felt like it was handed to Carlton, and Collingwood's backline held up pretty well. Mackay goes down, so that probably plays a factor in a lot of it. Pies were never going to lose that game. I was pretty confident that whole way through that the Pies were not going to lose that game. As for this Thursday night, Collingwood, this is not a bottom 6 team like you are used to beating for the last 5 weeks. The Crows are hitting their stride and have looked reminiscent of their 2025 selves from the last few weeks. The Pies are improved from the start of the season. There is no denying that. They actually look a lot better than they did starting the season, where they were very shaky. This 5-game win streak is against weaker opposition, but they're still playing a better brand of footy. However, they love playing at Adelaide. They love this trip to Adelaide Oval. And historically, these two teams match up very, very well. Mouth-watering matchups, very close games. No Fogarty helps the Pies immensely, especially with Jezza Howe coming back in the side for the Pies this week. Look, at the end of the day, the Crows are red hot. The Pies' form is questionable. The Pies' form is very, very questionable. But I think the Pies keep it close and challenge the red hot Crows. Adelaide probably still end up getting the win in this game, but my free tip is the Pies plus 15.5 at $1.90. Can see a world where the Crows get on top by a goal. Heartbreaking for the Pies and hurts their wildcard chances. But I think it's closer than a lot of people might think. And my headline for this game is Scared Crows. The Pies give the Crows a massive scare as they almost get over the top of the red hot Crows at Adelaide Oval. The next game, lads, is Melbourne versus Geelong at the MCG. Melbourne. They're beating the MCG merchant allegations I put on them earlier in the season. I think Melbourne or Adelaide are the team who come out of nowhere to upstage a top team and make a prelim this year. It feels like it happens most year. A team outside of the four shocks everybody, makes a prelim, does some damage during the finals series. Melbourne are just so young and fun. They've got major Collingwood 2022 vibes, major Richmond 2017 vibes. Not saying they'll win the flag, but it is that real fun, young team who just everything's clicking, everything's working. A lot of people thought it was fake at the start of the year, but for Melbourne, it feels really real. It feels like this is them. This is a team that can really make an indent into this final series. Probably not win it, but really challenge a few teams like this Geelong team who did not fill me with any confidence last week. Yeah, they won. Yeah, they had a really good win against St Kilda. But the Saints at GMHBA is such an win. Of course you win. Like, if you're Geelong and you don't win that game, I am absolutely shocked and horrified for your future. I'm still worried about them. At their best, I think they're a first-round exit come finals time, especially now with no Holmes and no Jezza Cameron. They might both come back for that first final. If they even make it, they might come back for the wild card, if they even make that. But, yeah, I just don't see them dominating. I just don't see them doing anything significant, even in the next 5 weeks, let alone in the wild card round and beyond. As for this game at the MCG, Melbourne-Geelong, Friday night, Geelong hates leaving GMHBA Stadium, argue with a wall. They've proven this season against any decent opposition, especially when it is away from their beloved Cardinia Park. They are very, very vulnerable and can be very, very weak-minded. I think Melbourne are very real. They love the G more than anyone this year. It'll be hard for them to be stopped this week at that ground. Give me Melbourne as my free tip. I'm taking Melbourne head-to-head win at $1.85. I love the value there. And my headline is maximum performance. Max Gawn takes advantage of Geelong's horrible ruck stocks in a D's win where Gawn has 25 plus disposals. We saw it last week. Rowan Marshall looked like prime Dean Cox. He looked elite against, I think it was Edwards that was playing ruck. Geelong's ruck stocks have just never been good. Like, since I was very young, I can't remember them having a very decent ruckman since probably Brad Oddens. And that is a very big throwback. He should be the random player one day because I don't think Jezza would know who he is. But yeah, I'm taking Geelong there. I'm taking Melbourne there with ease. And I think Gawn absolutely dominates. Chuck, I'm going to check what that is for you boys to add into your player props. I am checking that right now. Let's have a look. Max Gawn, 25 plus is the pick I'm looking for. Yeah, but I just feel like Geelong's ruck stocks are just abysmal. And they have been for a long time. And I think Gawn is at that stage where he just likes to toy with teams with bad rucks. Jesus, boys. This is going to be ridiculous. He doesn't even have a market. That's how unlikely they think it is. But let's go for 20 then. Yeah, Max Gawn has no disposal markets, which is crazy. But I love him there for this game. We've got the derby next, the derby. It's Fremantle versus West Coast at Optus Stadium. Called the Fremantle game perfectly last week. Predicted that they would struggle to smash Port at Adelaide Oval. simply because they're in cruise control. No worries in the world about this team. They rested Shai Bolton last week. They will be fine. They still got the win. And they helped with my free tip, which was a very good free tip. Fremantle 1-39. It ended up just getting in the 39 points, but I'm very happy with that right there. As for the Eagles, well done, West Coast. Very competitive and strong. It's at the point where West Coast, I look at them, I looked at the scores when I was at the Pies game, and I wasn't even like shocked. I wasn't even like, oh my God, no way they're winning in that first quarter against Brisbane. I believed it was like, yeah, this is a good team that they can be good at home. I don't think they're going to beat Brisbane in this game, but I am like very content with the fact that they're beating Brisbane early in this contest. I still expect them to lose. I still expect them to get a good pick this week. The signs are there though, and that's something we haven't been able to say about West Coast since probably 2019, 2020, that the signs are there to be a competitive and decent team going forward. As for this game against their old rivals, this will not be one of those games where Freo starts slow. This will not be one of those games where West Coast start well. Freo will easily have their way and against their crosstown rivals and put them to the sword here. West Coast will struggle to fire a shot in this Fremantle domination. Even though Fremantle are in cruise control, I think a game like this is one where they will want to put on a show for their fans against their rivals. That's why my free tip is Freo 40 plus at $1.70. And my headline is Demolition Derby. Freo hammer the Eagles, and this rivalry feels non-existent with one team's dominance over the last several years. Because at the end of the day, like the Pies versus Blues, how much of a rivalry is it when somebody like Patrick Cripps has a record in his 23 games against the Pies of 3 wins and 20 losses? Feels like it's the same for a lot of these Fremantle players and West Coast players in Fremantle's favour, of course. Next game we get to is obviously that man Paddy Cripps team, Carlton versus Gold Coast at Marvel Stadium. I said to end the season, the Blues will go 0-7 after that 7-0 run against weak opposition. Right now, they are at 0-2. Harry Mackay is very mentally vulnerable, and I felt a bit bad for him because just looking at him on the bench there, he did not want to play, and it just felt like that onslaught of media attention about if this injury's fake was going to come. And to be honest, I see why, because it really was innocuous. It really looked like he just couldn't be fucked. And it just feels like he does this a lot in like certain situations. Cripps and Walsh can be selfish. That's what one of my points was. And it looked like it a lot of times, and it cost them a few times in that game. I remember once when Carlton really had all the momentum, Cripps had around 4 players open in the forward line where I was sitting in, and he just like tried to barrel through a few players, barrel through Jeremy Howe, and ended up getting tackled and spraying the ball on the full in the Ponsford stand end, which was just like made me think, like, I know he gets praised for being this selfless champion, but there is times where he can just want to be takeover mode. And I heard someone on the radio this week excuse it and say, oh, that's just because he just wants to put the team on his back. At the end of the day, it's not. At the end of the day, that was selfish, and it really cost them a goal there. The Fraser talk has died down, obviously, with these 2 losses against the Hawks and the Pies. And if I was a Carlton fan, I wouldn't hate that too much, because I'm really like optimistic for Blues fans that Longmire, now that he missed out on the Tassie job, will be open to the idea of coaching one of the big 4 clubs. Obviously, there's 2 of them available right now, Carlton and Essendon, and I think Carlton is the likely destination. Even though the reports are that they want an experienced coach, I think there's a chance Longmire is the man. As for the Suns, fuck these Suns. Honestly, I had the Dogs win as my free tip on the pod, but on my tipping comp, where I am a game clear, I backed the Suns to try and get 2 ahead. Backfired clearly. Their list in hindsight isn't that good. It's a lot of overrated players due to their draft position. Yeah, they might have 16 first rounders on their list or playing last week, I'm pretty sure it was. But at the end of the day, how many of them are that impressive? Not many. Ben King leaving will not be a bad thing for this team. I think he's a very overrated and overpaid player, and I think Hawthorn fans will live to learn that when they get him. In this game, I just can't go back to the well with this Suns side. Not crazy about the Blues either at all, but the Suns are abysmal. Marvel factor could save the Blues here from their 0-7 fate that I predicted to end the season. Wouldn't be surprised either way. Wouldn't be surprised if the Suns come out and end their 8-game losing streak because it has to end at some stage. But I think I will back the Sun side, this blue side in here at home, purely because it is at Marvel Stadium. So my free tip is the Blues 1-39 at 2.30. Don't think they're good enough to smash him. Love the value there for for 1-39 there at $2.30. Next game of the round, boys, is Hawthorn versus Essendon at the MCG. Mitch Lewis, come to the Pies. Oh my God, he was so good last week. 5 goals. Hawks, however, they took care of business, did what you expected them to do. What else were they going to do against that Richmond side? What do look good? They just look dominant. Still not sold on them. I know that might be hard for a lot of you to comprehend. And this week could be up 200 points, and I still probably wouldn't be sold on them. Because yes, they're beating the teams that are in front of them, but still, smashing Richmond, smashing Essendon at this stage of the season does nothing for me unless they do it against a really good opposition, which they're not versing this week, so you can't blame them for that. I still can't really put too much faith into them. Dons. Jezza laughed at me for my free tip last week. Up the Dons. I had Dons, Essendon plus 36.5, and they go on to win the game. Giants are just so hot and cold, so I saw this cold game coming for them at Marvel last week. They're a rabble, the Dons still, but weren't going to go through the whole season, only winning 1 game. That was their last win for the season, I think. It was just a win to give them a little bit of a bone. They're still shit. There's still a lot of pain coming. But at least now you're starting to see a few bright spots. Roby looked good. Sharp looked good. Farrell looked good. That big 3. Caddy obviously is a good player. Kako, I'm still not sold on him. But there is optimism there for him as well. But this week they come up against the Hawks, who froth a massive smashing at the MCG against the bottom 4 side. And as if last week against Richmond wasn't a blessing for them enough, they come up against the Dons this week. Yes, the Bombers won last week, but it was just a little blimp on the radar. They are categorically zero chance to replicate it this week. Hawks by heaps and heaps. That's why my free tip is the Hawks minus 53.5 at $1.90. We've got the Battle of the Bridge next, boys. We've got GWS versus Sydney. Last week, like I just spoke about, GWS were horrible. It looks all doom and gloom, I can't lie. They're just very susceptible to collapsing as soon as it gets a bit hard. Even though this list is just really good, they for some reason cannot put together a very consistent season whatsoever. But yeah, like then in the same breath, they can collapse very easily, but they can just have a burst of momentum and look really good. Swans, pretty shit loss at home, I can't lie. I still believe deep down, I'm really adamant on them being a good team and making an impact come finals time, making an impact come September. But they have to really tighten up a few things. I can see them coming with a run in the last 3 to 4 weeks, and I think it might just start this week. This game would have been a lot more interesting if it wasn't for the Giants 4 last week. Swans haven't been that great as of late, like I just said, but I can back them to get it together this derby. Even though this is at NG Stadium and maybe close and an ugly game, I think the big brother gets the chocolates here and win to get their year back on track, even though they're sitting second, back on track, more in a sense of form-wise. My free tip is the Swans minus 9.5 at $1.90. The next game is the Bulldogs versus Richmond. Dogs, such a necessary win that they got it done. Like I said, when the Hawks did it, when the Pies did it, I can't pay too much attention to a win against the Suns at home. I don't care. It's just not a fortress. They're just not a good team. But the Dogs did what they needed to do. So all props to them there. Bont looked insane. So all props to Bont there, who Jezza can never give props to. Tigs, horrible spot they're in. They're in a horrible spot. I would definitely hit up John Longmire. I have no faith in Uze whatsoever. The young talent just isn't blossoming. Is that because of there's too many of them playing at once? Is that because none of them are going to be good? Or is that because of style and coaching and development? I think it might be the last one. I think it might be coaching. I think it might be game style. I think it might be development. This will be a very similar to the arse whopping the Tigers got handed to them last week. I can't see the Dogs losing this one whatsoever, or even winning by anything less than 5 goals. Richmond have thrown the towel in, and the Dogs are desperate to get this season revived before the wildcard round comes about. The Dogs will make it 2 wins in a row. Give me the Dogs minus 41.5 at $1.90 right there. Only 2 more games left, boys. The Sunday slate. Let's get through it real quick. Let's smash it out. Brisbane versus Port Adelaide at the Gabba. I think the Brisbane Lions are back. I know the poor start was really there. I just see this Brisbane team as a team who will struggle the next 6 weeks to get themselves up for versing bad opposition. They're the opposite of a flap track bully team. They're a team who goes, oh shit, this is a good team. Let's kill them. Let's go up against a good team and play up to their level. They were never going to drop that West Coast game, and they did not. I was never worried about that tip, even though the Lion lost. Port, however, quite the opposite to the Lions. They're a poor side. Without their 3 best players especially, and still were so competitive. They're having the perfect ever tank/rebuild season. They're playing good enough to have faith and to develop players and to, like Joe Richards on the weekend had 35 and 2 goals, looked really, really good, and get games into these guys, but they're still losing games, so they're going to have a great pick. From the start of the year to now, the prospect of Butters leaving has been a lot smoother because they have signs of direction. They've got signs of a future, especially with these academy prospects coming through. I have optimism for Port's future way more now, even with Butters leaving, than I did to start this season. But for this week, boys, what's important is round 20 right now. Brisbane are ticking and they love the Gabba. I think despite the Power not being a top team that the Lions usually play up a level against, I still think this will be pretty comprehensive. The Power can be competitive at home, but over at the Gabatoir, it'll be hard for them to even compete. I think this is a Lions fill your boots game, like it was against Essendon a couple of weeks ago. A lot of players will have multiple goals here. So I love betting-wise, Brisbane players for goals, multiple goals, 2+ goals, 3+ goals, whoever you like. But for my free tip, I will take the Lions 40+ at $1.87. I love the value there. I know there's a lot of optimism around Port and their play and how competitive they've been able to be. But I think at the Gabba, the Lions have an onslaught. And the last game for the round, boys. Thanks for sticking with me up until this point on my solo episode. It is North Melbourne versus St Kilda at Marvel Stadium. North. They are the world's most below average and lackluster team. And that's crazy to say, especially since they're coming up against the Saints, who usually have that mantle in my eyes. People still saying it was a good year and that they've improved baffles me. I don't see much improvement. I know they've won more games, but at the end of the day, it hasn't been that comprehensive and dominant, in my opinion. Yeah, they were okay in that game against Melbourne, but come on, man. They have not done anything to give praise. I still would move on from Clarko. That's just me personally. Maybe I'm too quick to move on from coaches because I would move on from these other coaches as well. Ross Lyon. Talking about mid and lackluster teams, have not beaten anyone above them on the ladder at all. They're just so shit, and I've got no faith in them in that game against Geelong, especially because it was at GMHBA. Naz getting tagged is a real worry. If I was Clarko, I would 100% chuck somebody on Naz because when he's on, he is obviously very impactful for the Saints winning. But when he's having a shocking day, they've got nothing. Even though Rowan Marshall dominated last week, they've got nothing other than Naz. And I don't want to hear about Max Hall. He's no impactful player as people talk about. He isn't even that good of a user, Naz, like I said before, so I won't get into that now. As for this game, the Sunday graveyard slots, this will be one the North get. This will be the game when North Melbourne win and everyone goes, whoa, look at North go. They've been close against better teams. They've been close against Melbourne, against Collingwood, who I still both classify both those teams as better than St Kilda. They come up against the same side who I don't rate at all. At Marvel Stadium, their preferred ground, North's. Well, actually both teams, but I like North at Marvel better than anywhere else. And yeah, I think the Saints think they're better than they are. So I think they'll get humbled here. North simply need to find a way, and I think they will find a way to win their first game in a month. My free tip is North win at $2.63. Combine all my 9 legs there, all my 9 picks, where I went 7 out of 9 last week, boys, all together in a multi, and you get $559.35. So a pretty big one for you there, boys, a pretty juicy one. I've got a lot of 1 to 39s in there. I've got a lot of good picks there. So stick with me there, boys. I'm going to be solo the next couple of weeks. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. As always, as I'm out of breath for this 45 minutes, thank you all for sticking with me. I will see you all next week. Message me the random player. Peace, prosperity, and love. You.